Hey guys, you know Muv-Luv? You know, one of the most important visual novels of all time? Has been sitting on the top spot of VNDB for years now. It's inspired a ton of spin-offs, some of which were adapted to anime. There's an upcoming anime adaptation right around the corner. You know, had an English release due to a Kickstarter that managed to raise over $1 million. Fine, it was the main source of inspiration for Attack on Titan. Yep, that's right, Muv-Luv, a deceptively cute rom-com that ended up as a mecha war story against a gruesome alien race, was the main source of inspiration, together with a minor scuffle at an internet cafe, Wikipedia tells me, for Hajime Isayama's juggernaut of a manga, Attack on Titan. For those of us into visual novels, Muv-Luv is a pretty big thing. As I said, it has been the highest rated title at Visual Novel Database, a site dedicated to gathering information in English about the medium. It took quite a while for it to make its way into the West officially, however. It originally released in Japan back in 2003, and Westerners read it via a fan translation until 2015, when the developers launched a Kickstarter to fund its localization, and it was met with massive success. The all-ages version, yeah, it was originally an erotic game back when it released on PC, I really don't want to spend any more time than I absolutely have to on relaying this information, was released on Steam in 2016, and I happen to have finally read it this year, 2021. It was gifted to me at last year's Secret Santa, by the way. Thanks, Enhiki. You know who you are. Are you watching this video? Are you? You better be, you little sh. Anyways, I really enjoyed it. Despite some glaring flaws here and there, it is a pretty big epic that really stays with you well after the credits roll. You have to put up with quite a high entry wall in order to fully enjoy it though. You see, I need to explain the way this trilogy works now. The original Muv-Luv game is actually 2 in 1, Muv-Luv Extra and Muv-Luv Unlimited. As a standalone installment with about 3 times more content, we have the sequel, Muv-Luv Alternative. The latter is receiving an anime adaptation in October 2021, and because of that I thought it would be interesting to make this video for you, a guy or gal who may be curious about the anime, but will feel totally lost if you decide to actually watch it without knowing about its prequels, or, you know, may know about the Muv-Luv franchise already but doesn't really feel like spending around 25 hours at minimum in order to catch up to Alternative. You see, this is one of those occasions where the real, actually very good part of the story starts around episode 100. I'm sure you've heard this sort of argument for any given title at least once in your lives. Alternative, a 50-hour visual novel, is for all intents and purposes the actual meat of the story, and in order to fully appreciate it, you need to go through Extra and Unlimited. It's a high entry wall indeed, and I hope this plot summary with a bit of my impressions mixed in may help you. In the future, perhaps once the anime releases and as an excuse to compare the two, I may do a whole video on Alternative, as that game kicks some serious ass and I love doing plot summaries anyway. That's actually half the reason I started this channel. There's not many opportunities to do it in real life when you're together with your friends, chatting about day-to-day stuff, because it's weird for you to suddenly begin blabbering on about some random and obscure weeb shit. People just begin to awkwardly leave the premises, it's a whole mess. Anyway, without further ado, here's a crash course / review into Muv-Luv so you get to watch the anime unencumbered, and it's the inspiration for Attack on Titan that helps get people interested. I may repeat this a few more times during the video, that tag certainly helps, bear with me, okay? So, our story begins in Japan, 2001. Takeru Shirogane is your typical harem protagonist. He has a childhood friend that barges into his house to wake him up literally every day, has a bunch of female friends and only a single male friend that is clearly not male at all, is a bit of a dick to everyone around him for no reason in particular, has a very carefree attitude, and loves video games, especially Volgaron, an arcade mecha fighting game, and somehow attracts every single female character that comes his way and is insanely dense about it, much to the dismay of his aforementioned childhood friend Sumika Kagami. Things start to change when one day he wakes up to find another girl sleeping next to him in bed for no reason he can think of, this girl being Meiya Mitsurugi. Turns out Meiya is the heir to the famed Mitsurugi conglomerate, which is essentially a huge company that pretty much runs Japan and has unlimited resources, and for some reason she took a big interest in Takeru, to the point where she just forces herself into his life, transfers to his school, and sends his parents away on an all-paid vacation in order to live with him. Hijinks ensue, and Takeru finds himself in what is a pretty funny and effective parody of hot and rom-com anime, for around 6 hours. Yeah, while not lazy or outright bad, Extra is incredibly long, and if you don't pursue the routes of the other potential love interests, it takes around 12 hours to complete, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. Anywho, we should talk about the staple of visual novels for a bit. VN started out mostly as erotic games or just cute dating simulators, where you're a guy who gets to choose which of the available heroines you wish to pursue a romantic relationship with. Each heroine gets what's commonly called a route. Over the years, visual novels have evolved and played around with this concept. Sometimes the routes just don't pertain to love interest as much as they become different viewpoints on a mystery story. Sometimes there are different timelines that unlock the true route, which leads to a so-called true ending. Sometimes they're just sequential chapters, and some VNs ditch the whole dating sim stuff altogether. Whatever the case, Muv-Luv is pretty much a classic visual novel in that regard. We have our two main heroines, Sumika and Maya, who are both strongly competing for Takeru's affections, while he comedically can't take so much as a single hint until the very end of their routes. As side heroines, we have Chizuru Sakaki, the uptight class president, Kei Ayamine, a weird, mysterious, and athletic girl that is always butting heads with Chizuru, Miki Tamase, a chick that for some reason dresses like a cat and is a member of the archery club, and Miko Toyoroi, who is clearly a girl dressing as a boy but manages to fool everyone, including his best friend Takeru, though she is not dateable in Extra. He is also accustomed to surviving in the jungle due to his father's habit of just going into survivalist adventures with him. As other important side, non-dateable characters, we have Yuku Kozuki, an unparalleled genius that is somehow working as a high school physics teacher, and her best friend Marimo Jinguji, English teacher and homeroom teacher for Takeru's class. We also have Mana Tsukuyomi, Meia's personal maid and also a ninja, her three little trainees, Haruko Kashiwagi, one of Takeru's classmates, Akane Suzumiya, which some of you may recognize from Kimigano's Amuein, another visual novel by the same developers that had a moderately popular anime adaptation in the 2000s, and Takahashi Ichimonji, an initial D reference that drives a 60-meter limousine. Yes, you heard it right, he's also voiced by Dio. And that's pretty much it. This is a by-the-numbers, cliched as hell Japanese rom-com, and that's the point, as it's clearly meant to be a parody. The way it plays with some of the genre conventions and self-awareness to its own absurdity can be actually quite funny, like how Meia's conglomerate has so much money and power that they are able to actually bribe all of Takeru's neighbors into leaving their houses so that Meia can leave the entire neighborhood completely empty, save for 2 houses. She also walks around with a sword. Yuko is completely ridiculous. She comes up with alternate universe theories during class, forces her friend into doing cosplay, and runs over her own students.
まあ大丈夫。人間って意外に丈夫にできてるから。
Cool shit. It does overstay its welcome though, as it repeats its gags until they become just annoying, comes up with arcs that just seem to never end, and I found myself generally running out of patience as I wanted to experience the other, more serious side of the story. I ended up only playing through Sumika's and Meia's route, as those are the essential ones that, in the original release, had to be completed in order to unlock Unlimited. I therefore can't speak for the quality of the other routes, but I've been told they do foreshadow some stuff that comes up later, like this dude right here in Kei's route, or how Miki has performance anxiety when aiming her bow, but I felt skipping them didn't really damage Unlimited or Alternative for me. Anyway, Sumika and Meia. After spending the entire game pining for Takeru's affection, they eventually decide to become friendly rivals in love, as Takeru overhears during a hot spring vacation, and then he realizes they are actually in love with him! Oh, ha ha ha! Who could have guessed? They start to come onto him more strongly, and he learns a bit more of each's backstory. Sumika has always been in love with him, but is fearful that he can't bring himself to view her as a woman instead of just a friend. Meia actually carries the weight of the world on her shoulders due to the fact that she is the heir to this insanely big and gaudy conglomerate empire, and he later finds out that they actually met once when they were kids. He made a juvenile promise to marry Meia as she was being carried away by her father to never see him again. As she wouldn't normally be permitted to marry a commoner, Maya struck a deal with the patriarch. She would go back to her childhood love and see if he could remember the promise made by himself until a given deadline. Once that expired, she would settle for her arranged marriage and give it up. Once Takeru realizes that, it's too late and Maya has flown away to the Mitsurugi headquarters. It is then, upon the tree on the hill behind his school, that Takeru meets up with Tsukuyomi, who offers him one last shot of pursuing her. There, he also meets Sumika, who also has learned of Maya's circumstances and feels guilty of trying to hog Takeru all for herself, coming so far as to encourage him to go to Maya and forget about her. Now, Takeru must choose. Both their routes are largely the same, and this is where they split. In Sumika's route, Takeru realizes that Sumika is indeed his one true love, and he was just avoiding thinking about it because he didn't want to change their treasured relationship. They go back to his house, and they boink. On the same hill during Christmas, they are shown as a couple who deeply love each other. The end. In Maya's route, Takeru decides Maya is the one he has come to love and goes on to crash Maya's wedding ceremony so they can be together. They boink and are later shown as a couple who live on a recreated version of Takeru's old room, having both inherited the Mitsurugi conglomerate. The end. And that was extra. It may not seem like much, and that's because, well, it isn't, but I can't stress this enough. You need this content in order to truly enjoy what comes next. Otherwise, future major plot points and emotional moments won't hit just as hard, so trust me, this is important. Now, I couldn't find any information online, in English at least, to corroborate my theory that Muv-Luv was marketed as just that, another run-of-the-mill harem comedy for your average otaku. And then, Unlimited could be unlocked with no prior warnings, and it took everyone by surprise. Takeru wakes up in his room by himself one day. He finds it weird that Sumika isn't there, but hey, whatever. He puts on his school uniform, takes his bag with him, and steps out of his house. A completely barren, desolate version of his usual neighborhood. What looks like the torso of a giant robot lies there, crashed into his house. What will be the first thing that runs through his mind as he gazes upon this level of destruction? Yep, that's what he's going with. He thinks it's a dream. He then takes his usual way for school, you know, just to see what happens, until he notices that in place of his school is what appears to be a big military base. He goes on to fuck around with the guards at the gate until he is completely immobilized and realizes this dream might be a nightmare after all. He spends a few days in a cell until someone comes for him, Yuko, his former teacher. She orders the guards to release him and takes Takeru all the way to her office to hear his story. Upon hearing his version of events, Yuko posits that Takeru has, apparently, come from another world that she herself doesn't know of. She introduces herself as the Vice Commander for the United Nations 11th Force, Yokohama base. Taking an interest in this curious boy who still refuses to acknowledge reality, she proposes for Takeru to become a cadet at the base. This way, he can have a place to eat and sleep, plus she gets to observe and study him. Takeru, still in denial, begins his life as a new cadet at the Yokohama base in order to eventually become a surface pilot in the war against a mysterious alien race that has been battling humanity for decades. He goes on to meet alternate versions of his former classmates and teachers as he joins the Squad 207B. Everyone has essentially the same personality, but are all inserted in different contexts to accommodate this new reality. Chizuru is now the squad leader as opposed to class representative. Meiya is a highly skilled cadet who's very secretive about her background. Miki is an exceptional sharpshooter, and Mikoto is a girl. Whoa, who could have guessed? And also an expert survivalist. And Kei is a cadet that excels in athletics. Everyone from his old gang is present at Squad 207B, except for Sumika. She's the one person who's mysteriously absent from this alternate reality for some reason. Well, her and Ichimonji, I'm sorry to say he doesn't get a role in the rest of the series. Takeru begins his cadet training as a special addition to Squad 207B, and because of that, his squad mates expect a lot of him. He is, however, just an average harem protagonist. He can barely get by all of the physical training, falls in exhaustion when running laps carrying equipment, doesn't know how to assemble or use a gun, and is generally a useless sack of meat, much to the dismay of his squad mates. In between his trainings, he goes to periodic visits to Yuko's office, where he learns about the history of this alternate world and how humanity is now on the brink of extinction. 1958. America successfully launches the satellite Viking 1 towards Mars. Its landing probe begins to take pictures of the planet. One such picture exposed what appeared to be a life form native to that environment. The probe lost contact with Earth right after sending this message. Further probing proved that there was indeed life on Mars, complete with what appeared to be massive structures belonging to those mysterious life forms. However, upon analyzing the data, scientists concluded those beings were not native to Mars, but appeared to have come from somewhere else. 1967. A team from the Permanent International Moon Base Plato 1 conducts a geological survey which confirms the existence of the same life forms observed on Mars. Shortly after that, all communications are lost, and the team is never heard from again. This will later be known as the Sacrobosco incident. The mysterious life forms begin attacking all other human facilities on the moon, beginning the First Lunar War. It is then that those creatures are given a name, beings of extraterrestrial origin and adversaries of the human race, Beta for short. 1973. Beta landing units fall in the vicinity of Kashgar, Uyghur Autonomous Region of China. There are no common weapons that prove effective against the Beta. As they advance unrelentingly against their defenses, China and the Soviet Union eventually attempt to fire tactical nukes against them all in a scorched earth effort to halt the invaders, to no avail. And the Beta goes on to massacre both nations as it goes on its westward push. 1974. Another landing unit arrives at Saskatchewan in Canada. The Americans employ a strategy of concentrated strategic nukes and manage to eradicate it, at the cost of turning half of Canada completely uninhabitable. As the Beta advance, they leave not a single blade of grass left alive. Wherever they pass, fauna and flora are utterly destroyed within weeks, turning those areas uninhabitable for at least a few decades. Their bases begin to be called hives by humans. 1998. The Kashgar hive dispatches hordes of Beta further east, and they eventually reach Japan. By this point, over 60% of all human population on the planet has been decimated. Around 1 billion people are left in total. Humanity is still dumbfounded on how to deal with the Beta. It is impossible to communicate with them, and their battle tactics don't seem to make sense, being completely alien to what humanity has come to expect in war. Their vast numbers are overwhelming, and the best humanity can conjecture is that they are after the Earth itself. Mainland Japan is overrun, but a UN task force manages to retake it by employing experimental bombs known as G-bombs. In between all that, humanity manages to develop the only known weaponry capable of fighting off the Beta: Tactical Surface Fighters, or TSFs for short. Giant humanoid robots piloted by so-called surface pilots. As the days go by, Takeru and his squadmates continued their training in hopes of becoming surface pilots themselves. For that, however, they first need to pass the comprehensive combat skill evaluation. Takeru also comes into contact with Kasumi, a strange, quiet girl that resides in a dimly lit room alongside what looks like a floating brain in a jar. Now, a lot of people are also not very fond of Unlimited, mostly because it's still fairly lighthearted despite the grim circumstances, and there's no direct conflict ever shown during the entire thing. That's right, while we learn all this interesting stuff, we don't see the beta even once during the course of Unlimited. I, however, actually ended up liking it quite a lot. Suddenly, all those characters that were previously very thin and common archetypes of horror and rom-coms are now interesting, layered people. Despite their personalities and quirks being essentially the same, the new context shines a new light on who these people are and how they react to the now drastically different circumstances. During the course of their training, the group begins to bond in a way that was deeply entertaining to me. Takeru begins as this useless fuck who keeps dragging the group down, an average Japanese student who grew up in a world where his country was in total peace, so there's an immediate culture shock between his ideology and of those around him. They argue about the importance of following orders, the need to sacrifice yourself and make your death count, how, in a world such as this, there is no room for Takeru's naive notions of justice and freedom of choice. It's also full of little endearing moments that further contribute to the world building, like how Takeru realizes that this reality has no video games or any other form of high entertainment, since all resources must be used for war. His squad mates pass the time by playing simple games like shogi, a kind of Japanese chess, cat's cradle, and marbles. Slowly but surely, Takeru begins to befriend the girls, and they all sort of adopt him as a team mascot, making fun of him in his modern lingo that doesn't exist in this world, calling it Shiroganese. There's this whole section where Takeru gets whoever girl the player is pining for addicted to a game guy. Yeah, that's how copyright works, folks, that he retrieved from his room. Since video games don't exist in this world, he has to bullshit his way through it, saying it's actually a highly classified combat simulator. Speaking of world building, man is it awesome. Unlimited essentially serves as an introduction to this devastated world with an entire alternate history that is surprisingly detailed and even believable. I mean, I abridged a lot of it a few minutes ago in this video, but it has a crap ton of geopolitical shifting and intrigue as humanity deals with the beta that is mostly a joy to read about. There's also a lot of detailed sci-fi technology, like how the TSFs actually work, the need to use those fortified suits to both enable neurofeedback and piloting, and to shield the pilot from physical shock, nausea, and the like, despite its design being clearly meant for cheap fan service.
Actually, it is explained in Alternative that those suits are meant to—
Yeah, dude, shut up. Anywho, Takeru becomes close to his squad and vows to not be a dead weight for them, since he learns that this very squad has already undertaken the exam and failed once due to misunderstanding mostly brought about by the rocky relationship between Chizuru and Kei, one too uptight and bound by the protocol, and the other being too much of a loose cannon with no respect for the chain of command. The exam eventually comes around, and after many obstacles, hardships, and tough decisions, they manage to pass it in what feels like a true achievement, as by now I was fully invested in these characters. They begin their TSF training, and to everyone's surprise, Takeru is shown to be a prodigy on piloting those hunks of metal. Yup, his addiction to Volgaron back in Extra turns out to be an actual advantage in piloting. During this stage of the plot, Takeru learns more about his comrades' backstories. Chizuru is actually the daughter of the current Prime Minister of Japan. Kei's dad was a deserter soldier that brought shame and harassment upon their family. Miki is the daughter to the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations. And Maya is actually part of the Imperial Royal family, complete with Tsukuyomi and her trainees being her retainers. Tsukuyomi is deeply distrustful of Takeru, by the way, and calls him a dead man walking. Throughout the chapters, some important stuff happens. A sudden beta attack happens that may eventually reach their base, but it's halted before it comes to that. Takeru, however, is deeply impacted by the dread of having to face them off right at that point and ends up suffering from light PTSD afterwards. An unexpected sabotage of a space shuttle occurs, making it fall towards the Yokohama base. Tama manages to work through her performance anxiety to shut it down before the impact. During a training exercise, Takeru is paired with Kei and Chizuru and must somehow amend their antagonistic relationship in order to have a chance at winning. It all goes well. Both of the girls develop feelings for him, because of course they do. Due to volcanoes becoming more active ever since the G-bomb drops, an emergency disaster relief operation is conducted to evacuate all of the civilians living in Mont Tagan. During Takeru's and Meia's operation, a stubborn old lady refuses to leave, sparking an argument over how valuable nationalism and pride truly is in the face of imminent danger, with Maya vouching for the old lady and not wishing to part with her homeland. Due to this, they both attempt to stop the flow of lava from reaching the village, get caught in a landslide, have a bit of an intimate alone time until they're eventually rescued. Christmas comes and Takeru manages to fire everyone up for a Christmas party. Deciding to invite Yuko to the festivities, he finds Yuko completely wasted as she drunkenly rumbles on about the Earth having no future, how she failed, how she couldn't fit 15 billion semiconducting parallel computing circuits at the palm of her hand. After this, Takeru has a intimate encounter with whoever girl the players decided to court during the story. The next day, the base CEO himself comes in to break the news for Squad 207B. All this time, they were part of a secret experiment for humanity's survival, Alternative 4. That plan was considered a failure, and thus, Alternative 5 shall be put into motion. 2 years go by. 100,000 people are selected to leave Earth in migrant spaceships in a desperate bid to find another theoretically hospitable planet in a distant galaxy, as the rest of humanity is left behind to fight off the beta to the bitter end, using a large-scale attack of G-bombs. Whoever Takeru romanced gets to leave. The others, and him, stay on Earth, resolved to not go down without a fight. As the shuttles are about to take off, Takeru notices that Kasumi, a known selected person to board it, is nowhere to be seen. He rushes off to her room to find her in time, but she does not wish to leave. Desperate, she grabs the mysterious tube where the brain resides. Takeru pleads, but she keeps refusing until she finally says the strangest thing. There's no time to dwell on it. Takeru manages to convince Kasumi. His love boards the shuttle towards an uncertain future, and he stays behind to fight a losing battle. And that's Unlimited, an entertaining, if a bit bloated introduction to the real story to come. Muv-Luv Alternative released in 2006. It's a completely linear, 50-ish hour visual novel. When I said Muv-Luv was the inspiration for Attack on Titan, I lied a little bit for the clickbait. The specific title that was cited by Isayama as his biggest inspiration was just Alternative, and it's easy to see why. Humanity on the brink of extinction against gruesome, titanic foes that can't be reasoned with and devour any human they can. Battles that see humanity in a severe disadvantage with a high body count, plus commentary on the nature and usefulness, or lack thereof, of patriotism. This is the one that's due to get an anime adaptation this October. Now, I don't know how the anime is gonna go. From all the information I could gather, it seems like it will be indeed an adaptation of just Alternative, and that's a problem, because all this plot that I just abridged for you is of the utmost importance for it. Maybe they will integrate flashbacks here and there to contextualize Extra and Unlimited for the anime onlys? I don't know, but as of this writing, it doesn't look like it. Newcomers that decide to watch it on whichever streaming service it's released will be, at best, more than a little confused and out of the loop on the big, most impactful moments. And that's a shame, because it is really awesome. Its Kickstarter was so successful, and it holds the top spot on VNDB for a reason. So yeah, this is my modest attempt to get you up to speed on Muv-Luv in case you want to check out the anime or just skip to Alternative from the get-go. Of course, I don't presume this video to replace the experience of reading it yourself, and I urge you to get the official release on Steam if you are so inclined. As I said, maybe I'll do a video on Alternative in the future, since that one is its own beast, and I hope the upcoming adaptation is worthy of its source material. In any case, that was me, the Geek Out guy. Yeah, I think I'll be going with that for now, and I'll see you all next time. Oh yeah, I also did another video on Evangelion and why I sorta rejected sending. If you want to see it, I'll be placing it somewhere in the screen, I think here. Okay, good. Anyway, bye!